Hey kids, welcome to Stylus Rumble rigging time thing. Today I'm just doing a little bit of an update with Jammy. So far I've added in these little handles and those are pretty easy to set up. I have a handles and expressions video if you want to learn a little bit more about handles. But it's just a drawing node connected to the pegs that are controlling these constraints. And then I've got a visibility node so that they do not render. Ta-da! It's pretty easy to do. And I want to see if I can get these knee joints working a little better because we're getting a lot of breakage and ugliness there. So that's something I'm going to tackle off screen just because I want to play with some ideas. But what I wanted to do is just show you guys the new master controller wizard because it took me a few minutes to get it under control. Because I was like, master controller, cool, I want to try this thing. So I went to the master controller panel and there's no drop down menu, there's no right click, there's just stuff. So I can like, what do you want me to do here, master controller wizard? What's this do? Refresh your list, but I don't have, like, how do I do that? So then I was like, okay, that doesn't work. Maybe if I go to the node library and I look up the master controller and I pull that in. But that's just like a bunch of scary scripting stuff that I don't understand. So the way you start the wizard, and even in the help menu, it doesn't say you start the wizard by doing this. So here is how you do it. Select all the things, all the different pegs and drawings and deformers that you want to be controlled by your master controller. So in this case for Jammy, it's absolutely everything because it's the main posing rig. Come up to animation, master controller, and then launch the interpolation grid wizard. If you want a slider just for like, you know, translate or whatever, or just a simple here to there slider, you'd use your slider wizard. Another place you can find it is if you add to your toolbar. So up here you've got all your different toolbars that you like. You right click on an empty space and you can add the master controller toolbar, which is just these two options. So the interpolation grid wizard's here and the slider bar wizard's here. So if you're doing this quite a bit, that's super handy to have on your bar. Can I just sneak it up here? Yeah. Boop, boop. So those are there. You can select whatever you want. I need a slider bar for this. Bang, make a slider bar, do your updating. So that's another place to find it. It just, it took me a minute. And now that we found it, it's actually really easy and convenient to use. So we're gonna use 9 poses, which at first I was like, but I only have 8 poses. But the logic behind this is you put the same pose on the beginning and end to help with your interpolation. So I'll show you that as I go. I'm gonna make the cell size 1 and 1 because it's smaller and I don't want it to be obnoxious. And then you can move the center here. I'm gonna move it up on the grid. So it'll be above Jammy's head instead of right over the center of their face. And okay. So now I've got a grid. You gotta come up here to see. And it's at the top of my grid. Or it's at the top of my like overall scene grid. And in here, you open it up and it's got all the things that you just selected in here. So if there are any that you missed, you can add selected nodes before you close this up. And you can move around here and select those nodes. Add them into your list in case you've forgotten any. And then you're gonna name it Jammy. Amazing. So then the next thing you do is you just assign each of these poses to your interpolation grid here. So I'm going to start on frame 1 for Jammy, and I want the front center to be the very middle of my grid here. So I'm just going to select that node and press OK. Then I can move over to my next frame 2, which is the up. So center up is here. Then once I click back over here, I'm able to use my lefty righty buttons to move along, and I can hit the next one in the group. So then I just go along, and if you have a sensible arrangement for how you're doing this, so here's the center. If they look left, if they look right, that's how I'm going to set it up. And then if they look down, that comes down, center, down, up. So all very logical. So then when you get here, the back one, back, up, down, and we're going to mirror it over here. So down, up, and center. This way, it'll interpolate between the back view here and then the 3/4 view here. Okay, and this one will interpolate between this 3/4 view and the back. So you have to double it. That's why they recommend 9. And it took me a hot second to figure out why that was. And then I was like, oh, that's actually clever. Good job, Toon Boomer crowd. There we go. That's it. Now it's done. Amazing. I'm really impressed with the setup here, how easy it is to set up. That's it. Everything is done. So we're going to create, boop. And it's going to ask us which composite we want to connect to. So maybe you've looked ahead of time to see where that should actually go and you know sensible location. And then it's going to open the script window and it's asking you to save things where you want them saved. So scripts is a sensible place to save a script. I've been playing with it, so I already have one. And then I'm going to close it. Now the only minor like whine I have about this is that there's no like even though you've created a grid, it doesn't actually show you a grid. So when you open it, you've got this box. And now, I mean, it's amazing. Like here's the center of your tile. Jammy can look up and to the right, down, and it's going to interpolate all of the poses that you've put in there. So of course, there's always going to be places like here where things start to fall apart, right on the edges, or where you're wrapping around the head. The Z-axis isn't really sure where it's supposed to be adjusted there. But overall, especially like just the front to 3/4 views, you're getting a lot of like super great work here. Look at that. Even their little eyes are working well. Whee! Amazing. So what I've done is I'll create a little grid here. And because it's set up along the grid lines, you can just create a pretty good approximation of where your points are going to be. So this is, again, just a drawing with the visibility node. And now it's sharing the peg with the master controller. So wherever it moves, it's going to move with the master controller. So here's my center. You're going to get just about the center of the character. And then, and that way you're going to be able to get a little bit closer on those main views. Kind of great. So once that's done, we'll save. You can strip everything right out of this scene. Boop. So unlike what we usually do in studios where you just have a ton of different poses along the thing, you can have as many of these as you want along your grid. I mean, your grid could take up the entire screen if you wanted to put like 100 poses in there. And then you're going to be able to pose it out along the timeline wherever you need it to. So here, I need the front view, then Jammy looks up and to the right, then over here, Jammy looks down. So then you can, in between all these here, and it's going to interpolate in between all those poses that you just put in there. So however many in-betweens and stuff you need, that's going to work out. So one thing to keep in mind, if I now adjust my pose, maybe Jammy wants to get something off the ground. Jammy's like, oh, I found a thing. We squish down a little bit. We put in some little bent knees because Jammy needs to... We're getting some weird... Let me just... tween like this. So Jammy's going, yeah, reaching down for a thing, and you're really happy about that, but then you decide you need to move your character again. So if you've disappeared your master controller here, you select the node itself, Shift F11 to show controls, or view, show, control, Shift F11. That's a really good hotkey to remember. Now when you move it, Jammy's going to keep the arms and stuff. So you do get some really fun things happening, but ooh, now I'm in an ostrich, Jammy. Look at my backwards legs. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind. The one that Scripter built for us, and I'll link down below Scripter's master controller. This one's the one that comes with Harmony 16, so it's just there for you. But Scripter's is based a little bit more on the pose copier. So if you move it back and like after you've animated, if you move that master controller, it will revert to the original thing. So all of your deformers are going to reset and it'll go back to the poses, the original poses. So here, if I come back to the first frame, because I didn't pose anything out, Jammy's going to get just the default rotation. But over here where I've animated some stuff, Jammy's going to have weird ostrich legs. That's a really important thing to keep in mind because you want to think about workflow. So you're going to want to use your master controller first to block out all your big poses, like your turns and like big looks and whatever it is you need out of that you're really getting it for. And then once you hit that stage, you're not going to be able to move it a lot. Like if Jammy's looking down and needs to come up a little bit, that works quite well. But there's a limit once you start posing things about how much turning you can do without having to counter animate some of the stuff that you've put in there. So keep that in mind when you're coming up with a workflow for this new master controller system. And you can also create other master controllers that control just the face or just the arms, just the legs, and you can use them with one another. So you could have a master controller like this one that controls the entire body. And then on a character whose entire body isn't the head, you can have a second one that controls the head. And it, again, workflow. So start with the entire body, then do the head, then do the details. Always good to start from the top down. So also, once you have your whole master controller set up, in your master controller window, it's going to show up down here in your master controller list. And then you can select it from there, and you can locate it within your node view with the little magnifying glass. And you can show the master controller here using the spline visibility tool. You can't select here and then shift F11. That doesn't work, but you know, nothing's perfect. You can still find it very easily using the thing button. If you just created it, it won't show up automatically, so you have to refresh it here if you've created one and it's not showing up. But that's certainly easier than finding it down here, especially if you're working off somebody else's rig. So if you have several characters, they each have master controllers, it's going to be easier to select it out of the master controller window than finding them in the node view. Super convenient. I love that. So this is super fun. I hope you guys are using it. Once I'm going to just play around with Jammy this week and get the file uploaded for the end of the week so that when I upload this video, Jammy 2.0 should be there for you guys. Whoever has 16, you can play with it. As always, the 2 rigs that are there, Blue and Jammy, are going to be free. Just tag me so I can see what you're doing. And if anybody else wants to download them, they can. I'd also like to update Blue. That's on my to-do list. It's just, time is a luxury, guys. So thanks for dropping by. Let me know what kind of stuff you are confused by in the node view. I'd like to do some more node literacy videos, some more drawing stuff. I have a lot of stuff I want to do. I just don't have enough time. So like, share, subscribe, all those things internet people ask you to do, and I will see you in the next video.